Whether we are there or not, ITSPmagazine still gets the best stories. Plenty of conferences and events spark our curiosity and allow us to start conversations with some of the world's brightest minds. In person or virtually, Sean Martin and Marco Ciappelli go on location and sit down with them at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Together, we discover what the synergy of these three elements means for the future of humanity.
I heard that something happened last night, and I want to ask you a few questions before we get our day 2 going here at InfoSecurity Europe, which you are standing in front.
It's behind me. There are a few people. I don't know how many thousands of people, but it's packed.
It's packed.
And I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, but evidently, well, at least reporting overnight, I don't know the specific details yet. That's what I'm going to go in and find out. Evidently, the NHS has reported a critical incident of a cyber attack, I guess a ransomware-based attack on some hospitals. My reading thus far says it's through IT service or IT systems provided or used by a pathology service that's provided to the hospitals and the GPs that perform surgeries. And so it's preventing blood transfusions and other blood-based treatments, evidently, and therefore patients are having surgeries canceled and other procedures canceled or being moved to other hospitals that haven't been impacted, and not cool, right? So
well, absolutely not cool, Sean, and this is almost what we talk about all the time. Like right? How it impacts society is not just about the technology on its own. And once again, unfortunately, in a very, unfortunate situation where you're damaging places that are helping people, yep. We find ourselves in this. So yeah, I don't think we could be in a better place right now.
Not many things more impactful than the healthcare system
exactly.
of the country. And lots to uncover here. Sadly, it's not the first time this has happened. I don't know. I think one report I read was 1.7 million patients affected. I don't know if that's what number that is, but hopefully some folks who actually do this stuff day in and day out have some insight into what happened, how it happened, who it happened from or by or through, and I guess more importantly, what do we do? I mean, it's a recurring theme of ransomware, and evidently, based on my reading, through a third-party provider. So,
something new.
Something new, exactly.
Well, you know what?
Let's go ahead and see what we can find. I think I have some friends that I know I want to ask some questions, and maybe we'll find some other folks.
Yep, I think
some insight as well.
I think we're in the right place to try to figure out what's going on and to get some opinions. So stay tuned with us. We're going to walk right in there in this big building right here.
Cybercrime and cybercriminals are not the cuddly hackers that we see from the old movies, the hackers or sleepers, or they're not the rogue teenage kids who have nothing to do in their parents' basement who are hacking for fun. Criminals are out to make money. And these are the same criminals who sell drugs, who traffic people, who sell arms, who kill people. And whatever it takes to make money, they're going to do it. And that's the type of people we're dealing with in cybercrime.
What we've experienced, especially with nation-state attacks, which unfortunately we've had quite a bit of experience with that, is the human element of intelligence is really key to identify what kind of techniques are being used. And if we think about what's happening in the UK, especially since the conflict that kicked off in 2022, the UK has continually been a target. You're seeing public infrastructure services, whether it's universities, academia, hospitals, there's some sort of attack happening on a regular basis.
What we're talking about happening in London over the past few days has been a cyber attack, which we believe is a ransomware attack, impacting surgeries and blood transfusion facilities in various London hospitals. Criminals have hacked into the systems of a pathology provider called Synosis, which provides these services to these various hospitals. It looks like it's a ransomware attack. And what's actually happened, and Sean, you're absolutely right, is that this has had an impact on patient care. Surgeries have been cancelled and postponed, and people's care has been changed. And I think, you hark back to the HSE. So the HSE is the Health Service Executive. It's the National Health Service for Ireland. We had a ransomware attack in 2021 during COVID, as the vaccination program was reaching its height and was being rolled out. And that ransomware attack took down all the healthcare facilities in Ireland, nationwide, all the hospitals, all the primary care areas. So, again, patient care was impacted. And we actually had a consultant surgeon in oncology who believes people have died as a direct result of that ransomware attack. So today, we have London City Hospitals being impacted similarly by cybercriminals.
The priority is always to limit or stop the damage. As you said earlier, with the hospital and the NHS as a whole, even within its supply chain, what's real here is that it's people and their health that is being impacted. That's really sad, and it's commiserations from us, because I think that's where you start to see the reality of the impact of an attack like this.
I think the first thing that I'd say is my thoughts are with everyone that's responding to the incident currently. So NHS colleagues and teams that are working extremely hard to help to continue to deliver critical care services in these circumstances. And that is really the key point. It's extremely complex to manage third-party supply chain risk. We all share that challenge, and it's how we can continue to support critical care services, business operations when events like this happen. So my thoughts are with everyone that's responding at the moment and helping to deliver frontline services in these circumstances.
As an industry, we need to talk about these things so that we can better understand what happens, better understand how we work with our teams internally, with our partners externally, with our boards up and down the stack to make things better.
Yep.
How does an organization, and more specifically the individuals responsible for a security program, get a mindset, set of communications, build a culture to hopefully prevent some of this stuff, which I don't think we'll ever get to 100% there, but how, in terms of responding, getting to a place where we keep things running as best we can?
So I think that the really important thing is to think about security as a business enabler, and really start with business outcomes. Rather than building security for security's sake, really understand what are the key things that the business is trying to do. So in this scenario that we're talking about, it's patient-centric care.
Right.
It's making sure that citizens are secure. So I think the first thing is making sure you appoint a security leader who has great communication skills, helps build a strategy aligned to the business outcomes. So to do that, they need to understand what are the critical assets. And assets aren't just the assets that the organization owns. So you've got to think about yourself as a business. You've got to think about your third parties. Your third parties, so fourth parties.
Right.
People, processes and systems are absolutely essential to look at all of those. It's not just about the technology.
Look, I think there's been a lot of improvement over the last few years. The National Cybersecurity Centre have come up with guidance to kind of support and help people. The NHS themselves are slowly but surely kind of getting better at cyber, but I think it stems from a couple of things. There has been relatively systemic lack of funding, and you've got a choice as an NHS, do I spend it on life-saving care or cybersecurity? I think there is an element of that. I also think some of the guidance that has been given is good, but is very broad, and I think sometimes to do the basics you need to potentially follow more of a US-style legislation where this is the line, this is how you achieve minimum security standards. Yeah.
We need to have resilience in our infrastructures, and I think we're seeing that now being introduced by various legislation. So in the EU, with the Digital Operations Resilience Act, DORA, and there is an R in the Act for a reason.
Exactly.
We have the Network Information Security Directive 2, which again is focusing on critical infrastructure. And a key part of that is resilience. But what have you got in place? What are you going to do to continue providing your services in the event of a major disruption caused by cybersecurity attack?
I think the first thing you need to do is identify what's important to you as a business. The second thing is prioritize the vulnerabilities that you need to go after. So thinking about those critical assets, are they actually exploitable in the wild? Because otherwise you could be chasing, your tail on lots of incidents.
Right.
I think the next thing is, once you've prioritized, is communicate to the board, build an outcome. So it's not about the tech, as I said to you, so it's about how do you prioritize those, how do you put the right investment around it, and then it's storytelling. So actually explaining to the organization what's critical, what's their risk appetite, tolerant to risk, and then apply that to some way of measuring. So you need to do continual improvement.
I think trying to connect technical components to real world scenarios, it can be quite a challenge.
Right.
But I mean, they're really simple things to look at. It's trying to say, well, what does this technology component, what does that actually mean in the real world? Like access cards is a really good one. So everyone can understand if my access card doesn't work, I can't get in the building. Well, what's the technical process and technical elements that support that? And being able to kind of show that to someone is a real life experience that anyone can look at. Trying to paint a picture of life-giving care. They're all connected in some way, shape or form. A lot of them are connected to internal IT operations. If we lose this particular application, we can no longer use these life-saving pieces of equipment. And I think that makes it a very real thing.
If that part breaks down.
I think it's make the assumption that you're going to have an incident at some point.
Right.
So, security tends to look at stopping something happening and saying no. I think it's about enabling the business. So when the inevitable happens, how do you keep the organization moving, and contain the incident? But to do that, you need to understand what the assets are. You need to understand the importance as a value to you as a business, and actually a value to your customer.
How can an organization like the NHS really get a mindset that follows in a plan that can be executed across their own entities as well as those that?
Yeah, it's a big question, and I think one of the largest organizations in the world, and it's actually a sense of pride, especially for folks in the UK, of what the NHS represents. It's part of our history, it's part of our core. With all of these things, the infamous line of attackers only need to succeed once. We need to defend every day. Tooling and technology helps, but it's as much as you can bring people on that journey.
And it's always about the people, and effectively a cyber incidents happen, but thinking about them as part of broader major incident response plans, emergency planning, the response and recovery element is so important. The cyber incident response teams will be working extremely hard to deal with the immediate impact of the incident, but thinking about that broader major incident management process and emergency planning and response and recovery is so critical, especially as we need to continue to operate in these circumstances, whether it's critical care services or whatever sector we work in, and the NHS is really on the front line of that and leading by example for the rest of the industry. Everyone that's here is looking at what's happening this week and learning from that response.
I think anybody you ask in the situation at the moment would say, we did our best, but here we are anyway.
There's bigger organisations that are more funded that have very, very large cybersecurity teams that have also, get impacted by ransomware. So I think trying to find this issue before it happens, I think is quite hard to do. I think a better assumption is it is going to happen. What are we going to do when it does? And I think preparing from that standpoint means you're going to be better prepared. It means you have some practice. Hopefully you have some kind of escalation procedures. You know how to deal with it technically and also the fallout of it. And of course, what do you do with actual patients that you can no longer support? Where are you going to put them? How are you going to deal with them? I think that's the only way you can really tackle this.
How do you see teams handling, I'll just say it, a crisis like this while also maintaining the rest of the situation?
I think you've touched on it by talking about crisis. So this is really crisis response,
right.
And having that, that exercising and preparation for being able to respond in a crisis, so you can deal with the crisis situation, but also continue to operate in the rest of the business. And it's equally important to be able to do both. And you can only do that by exercising, as you said, by being prepared, by having those professional response plans, and really by seeing cyber incidents as like any other kind of service disrupting incident, where we have to deal with that incident, but also have to continue to operate in the rest of the business to deliver frontline services.
And I also think we know that this scenario is likely to happen. So actually going through and spending some time preparing for that and practicing it, knowing it can be a really critical issue, I think would be really, really helpful. But more support, more guidance, and more specific guidance, I think would be really helpful.
So the more that we can exercise both within organisations and across sectors, it helps us to be resilient when incidents happen. So having that safe space in which to exercise and to practice responses really helps teams to be prepared for events like this.
Now, when you say cross-sector, what are you referring to there specifically?
So it's a whole of society challenge that we face. The cyber threat it's not specific to individual organisations or even sectors. It's about how we collectively prepare and respond to incidents like this. So partnering, whether it's within the health and social care sector or whether it's more broadly in other sectors as well, how we can collectively respond and be more resilient effectively in the face of the cyber threat, which is increasing.
And that's where we as an industry need to respond, and unfortunately the London hospitals are a victim of this attack, and all we can hope for is that they can work around the issues that have been caused and deliver patient care to the patients as best as possible.
Well, it's interesting times, Brian, and hopefully patients can get the care. Hopefully they get back online.
Hopefully, yeah.
I had some conversations earlier about whether or not to pay the ransom, and asked specifically the question on, does it matter the context and the situation? And I don't know if somebody's life is in jeopardy, maybe.
Well, I'm always a strong advocate, and have been and continue to be, of not paying the ransom.
Yeah.
Because even if you get the decryption keys, you have no guarantee they're going to work. And even if you get the decryption key and it does work, can you trust that device? And the only way you can trust that device is to wipe it and reinstall it anyway. So you're going to have to do that no matter whether you pay for the decryption key or not. So, preparation is key. I think the big difference in this attack compared to the HSE is that it was a third-party vendor, a supplier, that got impacted. So we now need to look from a cybersecurity programs and management programs, and not just focus on our own internal resilience, our own internal controls, but what have we in place and how can we better manage our supply chain, especially those that are providing critical services to us.
Thanks everybody for listening to this episode, where I think it was important to cover an event. As you know, if you listen to our shows on ITSPmagazine, we don't normally cover news items like that, but I felt it was important to not ambulance chase, not shame, but have a candid conversation with some folks to understand how we can help our organizations, be it public sector or private sector, do a much better job at protecting information and protecting systems that ultimately protect us as a society. So I want to thank all the folks who joined me for a few words, shared their insights, their opinion on how to improve. And as Heather noted, I want to, first Suk noted that it's important to recognize that there are patients here. So I want to send our best to those folks who are impacted by this. And then as Heather noted, there's a team working this case, and they're probably not having the best day. So I want to send a shout out to them as well for continued support and success in the work that they're doing on the front lines of the cyber incident. So hopefully this is good. Your feedback will be appreciated. I think honest conversations, everybody, and thanks for listening and watching.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Sean and Marco's on-location event coverage conversations. Please take a moment to give the show a good rating and leave a comment. Remember to share this podcast with your friends, family, and colleagues. Come back for more conversations and follow Sean Martin and Marco Ciappelli as they continue their journey toward redefining cybersecurity and society.